The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 3rd, 2021 Westminster Economic Development Authority Board of Directors meeting. At this time, I'll ask the city clerk to take the roll, if you would, please.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Councilor DeMott.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites. Here. Councilor Seymour. I'm sorry, Councilor Seymour, I didn't get any audio from you.
I don't think he's hearing you.
I think you're right.
You might have the same issue I had earlier. I'll text him.
All right.
Rich, can you hear us? Doesn't
Nope.
look like he's here.
Doesn't look like it. We'll try and get him offline. Councilor Scully.
Yes, ma'am. Here.
Councilor Smith.
Present.
And Councilor Bowles.
Here.
All right. Give us just 1 second while we try to get Councilor Seymour. That'll do it. All right. Counselor Seymour. Roll call.
Here.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Members of the authority, we've had a request to enter into an executive session in regards to an economic development activity for the WIDA board tonight. I'm going to turn to the city attorney to read us in.
Good evening, WIDA board members. The executive session that's proposed for this evening is to obtain direction from the Westminster Economic Development Authority concerning potential sales and acquisitions of property or property rights and economic development matters related to the next stages of development at downtown Westminster, and to develop strategy and provide instructions to the authority's negotiators as authorized by Westminster Municipal Code 111.3 C2, 4, and 7, as well as Colorado Revised Statute 246402, 4A and E1.
As defined by the city attorney, we've had a request to enter into an executive session. I will poll each member of council and ask them to answer verbally if they are prepared to go into executive session. Once that is done, we will exit the open session that we are currently in, and you have a link for the executive session and your password. Once we do that, I'll ask you to move as quickly as possible to that session. Councilor Scully.
Yes, sir.
Councilor DeMott.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Voles.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
And the chair as well. I will ask you at this time to leave this session and go to your executive session link.
Michelle,
Yes.
it's Cody. It's okay if you turn your camera off. We only turn them on when we're presenting to council,
Got it.
and they're finishing up their executive session, so hopefully we see them soon.
Okay,
And thank you,
great.
Jody, for bringing Michelle over.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'll turn my cam off. Thanks.
Michelle?
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
put the streaming PC in as a panelist, and that won't work. So I've got to disjoin the meeting from it, and I've got to add it back in. So you're going to have to give me a second.
Understood. We'll stand by. Thanks, Jody.
Okay, thank you. I've got to disjoin and join back. Okay.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
No erroneous jokes there, Mr. Seymour.
Yeah, from the guy that didn't have his earplug plugged in. Yeah, you have it in your hand.
Yeah, but it did look good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Wander around. Where did I plug this in? Oh, Lord.
We're going to get the hang of this as soon as we're back in full time.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be able to tell our kids about it. I had that. Grandkids.
Hello, hello.
Just so everyone knows, we are on live right now.
Excellent. Hello, community.
We're good. Everything's back up.
Thank you, Jody. I'm sorry, just to confirm, you said that the live stream is back up. Is that correct?
The live stream, it's always been kind of up, but yeah, the streaming PC got
The stream PC rather. Okay, thank you.
We're good.
Hello, Councilor Bowles.
Michelle, when we get the staff back over, Mr. Frankel, Mr. Tripp at least, let me know. We'll be ready to start.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Frankel, are you with us? Haven't heard him come back. Michelle, can you confirm Mr. Frankel's with us?
I am not seeing Mr. Frankel at this time. Mr. Mayor, if you could just bear with us for just 1 second.
Not a problem. Can't do anything legal without an attorney.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we should be good to go. If you want to just double check, but I believe Mr. Frankel has joined us.
Okay.
Excuse me, there's still an issue. It's not letting me bring the presentation screen up. Give me one moment, please. I apologize.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
For some reason, I am just having a problem. It will not show the presentation. So I, as the presenter, are going to disjoin now and rejoin. I'm not sure why it did that. Maybe it's how it was established when I lost the connection from the other one. I apologize. I'll be right with you. I'm going to disjoin the meeting. Let's see.
Michelle, do you recommend maybe we take a recess while we're waiting on the technical issues to get done?
I think so, Mr. Mayor. I understand that there are a couple of our IT staff who are working in the background to resolve these issues. So if you would prefer to take a short recess, we can certainly do that.
All right, let's take a recess till 7. Michelle, text me when you think we're ready, but we'll intend to come back at 7.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, would it help if we all got off and logged back in maybe?
I don't know what the issue is. Let's just try to go.
Okay. All right.
When our cameras normally come on, they don't come on like this, do they?
Don't know right now, Anita.
Okay.
I haven't heard that they resolved the problem yet.
I'm not sure what's going on. It just will not let me share the presentation. And I mean, I've tried everything. I'm not sure what to do. So, I mean, I'm hoping I'm going to try and get a hold of Phil and see if Phil can help me, because nobody knows more. And Matt's on an airplane, or I would be calling Matt. He is landing. Sorry, guys. I apologize profusely. All right.
Mr. Mayor, this is the city clerk. This is Michelle Parker. Just wanted to let you know that this evening, the only item that had a slide presentation was the COVID update. Our second item was discussion only with an outside partner. I'm not sure if that is helpful.
Based on the issues we were having, I'm going to recommend we forego the slides and get a verbal update on both of those so we can move on and keep the public from dropping off. Mr. Tripp, you have staff around, possibly Max on the COVID update, and we can go to him. Council, if there's time at the end, I'll come back to any updates with you before we go to the executive session.
Is Councilor Bowles on yet?
No, we're waiting on him. One of you try to reach out to John, see if we can get him back on the screen. Michelle?
He has just joined the meeting, Mayor.
Okay. John, are we losing your voice or recording? What? Nope, you're there. I heard you.
Never lose my voice, man. Don't even say that.
Let's just confirm that the recording is still going and that we are streaming, Michelle.
Yeah, I just confirmed that we can do this agenda without slides.
Okay. As soon as I know that we're broadcasting, we'll go ahead and proceed on.
Mayor and Council, thank you for your patience. We're less happy about this than I'm sure you are, and I apologize for it. The members of the public, I apologize also. We have staff that are working hard to try to resolve this. I could try to explain what the problem is, but that wouldn't be a good idea.
And Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, we are live.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Don, let's go ahead and bring Max on and try to get some of this, and then we'll come back to council comments in a minute.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the community. I apologize for the problems we've had technologically tonight. We've had a staff that's done a really great job here for 15 months or so, and we've occasionally had a glitch. It's amazing, I think, remarkable to those of us that don't understand how all this works, that we've been as successful as we have along the way, given the intense overnight move to this sort of virtual technology. But I'm fortunate to work with a council that's very patient and a staff that never gives up. And thank you, members, for hanging in this evening. We're going to move to Max Kirschbaum, who's in charge of our EOC related to COVID. And he's going to provide you an update tonight, absent the normal slides he uses, just narratively. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is going to be pretty straightforward. If I look at case numbers across the two counties, Adams County and Jefferson County, we did see another notable spike at the end of last week. but as I checked the numbers before the meeting this evening, they seem to have dropped somewhat significantly from Friday to today. So I don't know if that represents a real spike or was that a data issue? Hard to say, but so I'll just cut to the chase of the numbers as of today. The Adams County case number is at 201, still with a high percent positivity at 8%. Jefferson County is at 166, and that's a 5.8% positivity rate. Hospitalizations seem to still be climbing. Again, not at a fast rate, but still climbing. So as of the end of today, that number stands at 679. As you might remember, we hit a low point where we were down to 325. So it's still a concern, but not rising at a rapid rate. The other slides that I intended to show tonight, last week I showed just as a first look at what the Adams County slide for what will be the hospitalization metric on May 16th. This evening I added one more slide to that, and that would be the Jefferson County slide that is similar. In both cases, you see that the red line that you would see on that slide indicating the top of that metric breakpoint, which is 2 cases per 100,000, it is in both counties that data point is moving toward that 2.0 mark. So that'll be something we'll need to keep a very close eye on, as both counties will certainly between now and the 15th of May. The intended move by both county health departments on the 16th of May is to go to an all clear status as long as that level can be maintained below 2.0. So that's the thing we'll be watching between now and then. And next week, I'll be able to show you what both of those slides look like with another week of data on them as we approach that mid-May date. That's really all I had for this evening, unless you have any questions.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Kirschbaum, for the report. It's good information. I was wondering, the governor extended our mask ordinance yesterday, but he also adjusted it. I was wondering if you could address that and how it's going to impact the city.
Attorney Dave Frankel may also want to jump in on this point, and there he is. I'll hand it off to Dave. There are just a couple of key changes in that new public health order. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Mr. Kirschbaum. And yes, Councilor Scully, the governor's executive order regarding mask wearing was set to expire yesterday and was then extended until June 1st. The order as it reads now, the one amendment that has been incorporated, contemplates proof of vaccination as one of the questions really for mask wearing indoors. So it may be a preview of what's to come in terms of our local county orders, in that both the Adams County and Jefferson County public health orders that are in effect contemplate mask wearing in public indoor spaces. And both of those extend into this week and next. I believe that the Jefferson County order is set to expire, I believe it's the 5th of May, and the Tri-County Health Order goes until May 15th. But the state's new language contemplates gatherings where you have individuals who have proof of vaccination, not needing to have face coverings in public indoor spaces. So we would be watching for that language to appear in our local public health orders. Obviously, it raises some questions as to how you would know whether 80% of those in attendance in your event had proof of vaccination and whether you wanted to be asking them that question. But that is some language now that the state has put forward, and we'll see whether either of our public health agencies follow suit with the same language. So if that resolves that question, I do have a monthly update for the benefit of all.
Thank you, Mr. Frankel. It does.
Okay, so as this is our first study session of the month, I have the monthly update for council's benefit on the emergency declaration that the city entered back in March of last year. As council's aware, our meetings being online is one thing that continues in effect regarding study sessions as tonight, but also the hybrid approach that we have been taking with our in-person meetings for the past two, I believe, regularly scheduled city council meetings. And while we are transitioning to in-person, the viability of having partial, at least remote attendance is something that is continuing per the code under the current emergency declaration. And other emergency declaration related issues to update council on. I believe that our COVID testing contract for safety sensitive employees of the city continues in effect. As you're aware, restaurants had been pursuing expanded premises and outdoor dining applications, which had been expedited. I'm not aware of recent activity with that program in light of the reopenings. It may not be something that is as in demand, as most restaurants now have expanded their premises and are planning on reopening more to the public. With regard to ongoing tracking of eligible expenditures for FEMA reimbursement, it's my understanding that does continue in effect and that the EOC status of partial activation and meeting as required does continue in effect. And I believe that the city is still cooperating to operate testing and vaccination sites, and that we are pursuing federal funding opportunities as available. And with the previously provided mask update, as you're aware, obviously the city's resolution 17A was revoked and in favor of going with the more current guidance that we were receiving from both of our health departments and from the state. Those are the operative orders within our city at this time. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to field them. Otherwise, that is my monthly update for the emergency declaration.
All right, we had a question from Councilor DeMont.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Max and Dave, for your reports. One quick question, if we could, and this is probably for Mr. Tripp, at some point in the next day, if we could post the slides that we were going to have tonight. So if people want to look at them as they listen, that would be helpful on the website potentially. Then a couple of quick questions around some of the details that you guys have shared. I'd have to say I have some concerns about people's privacy when we were getting into the realm. And I heard the governor's order, and I know it's not us, but I certainly am going to be concerned if we start going down the path of asking people whether or not they have done certain medical procedures or not. I think that's a dicey, slippery slope in my opinion. But I guess we'll have to see what they come up with that. But with that being said, as far as like the emergency status that we're in, and you just shared details of it, and I know part of it was around things that we have to get reimbursed for. Do we kind of have a list of what that is at this point? Like, is there a percent, or like, how are we judging when we're going to get out of that status? And I know it really only pertains to that, but I think it would be nice to be in a normal cadence of business. So just trying to understand how we're measuring that goal to be able to go out of the emergency situation.
Well, I think as it relates to the financial assessment, I think you gauged it properly, Councilor DeMott. I've got Larry coming on here a little bit to talk about some facility and program updates. I think I'm going to defer that to him. But I think you're correct in your assessment there.
Okay. And I guess then my other quick question is, as far as that 80% relates to, say, council meetings, for example, I think that there's probably 80% of us who have been vaccinated. How does that change the mask wearing for council meetings? Or do we know yet?
So I would just offer that language is not incorporated into the Adams County order where City Hall sits, and the current guidance that's in effect from the Tri-County Health Department, I don't believe it incorporates the 80% confirmation of vaccination status as any kind of threshold for indoor mask wearing. So that's why I indicate, obviously we'll be tracking to see what Tri-County Health implements in its next order, which I anticipate on or about May 15th. I believe is when their current order expires.
So the only other thing, and I know that we've been doing this periodically for the last 14 months that this has been going on, but as those change, if we could make sure that whatever mediums we have to kind of tell people where we're at as a city. I know I certainly have heard from both residents and business owners, either questions about, do we still have ours in place? Do we not? And then just letting people know which guidance they're following. And I think you just made a really relevant point that people hear the governor's thing and they don't realize that we're still under Jefferson County and Tri-County. And so I think I've heard some comments from some business owners that, they'll have people come in saying, oh, I didn't think I needed it because, they're listening to what they hear on probably 9 News or whatever. So I think that would be helpful wherever we can. And I know you've done that, but if we could continue to do those educational pieces, I would appreciate it. But thank you for the reports.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I just have a couple quick questions. Mr. Frankel, you had mentioned something about the restaurants, and I didn't catch whether or not we're still allowing permitting for streets and allowing our restaurants to go into the parking areas.
So yes, the code does allow for expanded premises and outdoor dining and liquor license applications as well on an expedited basis. I'm just not aware of current demand for new applications as businesses prepare for reopening, but I can follow up and inquire and see how much demand we're currently receiving for those applications.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Kirschbaum, this might be for you or Mr. Tripp, but I brought it up last meeting about COVID testing and where we're at with employees and if we're going to continue that.
I think that was related to public safety, as I recall, right? Max, do you know if there's any update on that?
Yes, at this time we are continuing with the elevated level of testing for fire, police, and critical plant operators. Deputy Chief Eric Burke is still consulting with various medical experts to determine best time to either ramp that back down or cease it altogether unless unless any of those individuals exhibit symptoms. But we're still in that review stage, not at a decision stage. So at this time, we're continuing with that level of testing.
Okay, thank you. If we could just continue to get updates on where we're at with that, that would be helpful.
Sure, I'll make it a point to include it next week.
Okay, thank you so much. And then my last question was, I thought I read somewhere in the CDC, this kind of goes back to Councilor DeMott's point as far as having 80% vaccinated from the governor's perspective, but I thought I read somewhere in the CDC's recommendations that if there's a partition in between people, there is no need for masks. Can you speak to that? I don't know if our counties are inheriting that or adopting that. Like I said, I read it and then kind of went over the head, and then it just kind of was highlighted again tonight. So,
Councilor Smith, if I could, unless Mr. Kirschbaum has information that he would like to present.
Not at my fingertip. I saw the most recent guidance I saw from CDC was related to outdoor mask wear, not indoor mask wear. So I might be a step behind on that.
Well, I agree. I am also familiar with that more recent announcement. As for partitions, my understanding of the current guidance that's incorporated into both the Tri-County and the Jefferson County orders is that when speaking to an audience, which is in the guidance elaborates a bit, that mask wearing is not required if you are 25 feet in front of your audience and they are masked. Whether that evolves over time, I'm not familiar with partitions and how that might play into a speaker addressing an audience.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I just, like I said, I read it and I thought I'm just going to ask the question tonight because we're talking about it. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Councilor DeMott, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm curious, and this is Councilor Smith asked for some of the info I'd like, but just to expand upon about our first responders and our plant operators being tested, specifically around the ones who have been vaccinated. I know that our first responders had the opportunity, and thanks for pushing to make sure that they got it, to be vaccinated early on. And so with the ones who are vaccinated already, the testing seems, well, I mean, we're still learning so much about this, but my concern would be that that's overkill for those folks who have now been vaccinated for some time. And I would just ask that you make that part of the equation. And I think that came up when we were visiting roll calls, specifically some of the graveyard. I guess they had the opportunity to go be able to learn how to do their own tests, because I guess it was problematic to be able to go to facilities at night that were available for them to do their weekly test. So they, and that's the discussion that they were having, was just that they could go learn how to do their own test, which I've had the unfortunate experience of doing at my doctor's office, because that's how they did it. They gave you a thing and said, close your window and shove this up your nose. Not very pleasant. So the point being, if we could figure out how that folds into the folks who have, made that effort to protect themselves in the community by getting vaccinated, I'd appreciate knowing how that folds in, and if maybe we could look at allowing them not to do those tests if it made sense.
Yes, that's definitely the review that's underway. We are erring on the side of caution until we have solid medical advice back to Deputy Chief Burke, so that we don't end up reversing ourselves at a later date. We make one good decision and move forward.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Max. Thank you very much for your report, Dave. All right, Council, we're going to move on to the next item.
We have one more COVID report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Larry Dorr, please.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of City Council. While public health orders will continue to expand business openings and public interactions, I wanted to recommunicate the city's position with reopening some of our facilities. As you'll recall, due to the financial impact of the pandemic, the city's 2021 budget was adopted with reductions and a freeze on filling many positions. The 21 budget reductions changed the operating hours of recreation facilities and programs. Staff provided an update to City Council Thursday in its regular email communication, but I wanted to recommunicate this for the sake of the public and share some potential outlook for the future. The city manager and department heads will be prepared to discuss options for potential increases to service hours and programs at City Council's financial retreat on May 15th. So I'd like to quickly run down the reductions and also inform you of a few openings from today and from the weekend. So I'll also post my overview slides for your review, given some technical difficulties here tonight. Well, first, in the area of libraries, we've reduced $400,000 in appropriations and also 11 hours or one full day per week at each library location. Of course, we've shifted our program deliveries to virtual services, as well as implemented a mobile library. So again, we'll be taking this for review and your policy consideration on May 15th. In our recreation centers and pool operations, we reduced further an additional $345,000, but reduced services at our rec centers by 57 hours per week spread across 5 separate facilities. Also, for our pool operations, we've reduced pool access by 148 hours per week across 3 facilities. So some meaningful changes there, but we have some reasons to be optimistic, as you learned recently in our COVID Chronicle and quarterly financial reports. At our Mature Adult Center, we had the facility closed until just today. It opened today at 6:30 a.m. and we had visitors waiting for its opening so that people could get access, and we had quite a successful opening. And I really want to give my appreciation to the staff who got prepared for that opening with retraining, reconnection, and a refocus for the opening. So that was successful. But again, those appropriations limited the center's opening until just this morning. In our rec programs, oh, by the way, that a reduction saved $125,000 in appropriations for this year. In our rec programs, we reduced specific programs based on relative proximity and contact between our patrons as required under public health orders for $55,000 in savings. And then at Stanley Lake, we had quite an occasion this weekend with the opening of personal paddleboarding and watercraft, and we set a record. We had 186 launches of personal paddleboards on the lake, and in true Colorado fashion, we had mid-80s on Saturday and hail on Sunday in terms of a weather impact and what happened at Stanley Lake. But that was a savings. We reduced rental paddleboarding. As you know, there's a process and staff time committed to renting out paddleboarding. That reduction conserved $40,000 in appropriations. And then last, but definitely not least, the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries made reductions in its global services related to anticipation of staff attrition, an additional $350,000. And that level of budget reduction was made on anticipated lower levels of service across the entire department. So altogether, over $1.3 million in reductions across those various programs, and then general attrition that was anticipated. But I just want to reiterate that we will be prepared to discuss options to adjust those service hours relative to public health order restrictions at Council's financial retreat a week from Saturday. So stay tuned for more, and thank you for letting me give you a little bit of a rundown. In fact, if I may say, just to sort of set the table, we expect much of the council conversation around the financial position of the city to focus significantly on, may I say, redrafting the 2021 budget, both in response to public health orders and then in light of the city's, I think, improving financial condition. We are cautiously optimistic. Finally, I just need to close, and I think a week ago it was mentioned. I want to add the city's employer perspective to this. I think Councilor Seymour, you mentioned that we need to have patience and grace with our local restaurants and their challenges hiring people and procuring supplies and materials. Well, the nationwide labor shortage has been unprecedented, and the city of Westminster as an employer has not been spared by this. The city is experiencing great difficulty in recruiting hires for the expanded openings that are occurring, which is one of the reasons I just really wanted to give thanks and praise to our staff at our MAC, our Mature Adult Center. Workers are just not rushing back, whether they're fearful of COVID-19 or they've moved on to other work or remain on unemployment benefits. It's probably a convergence of those factors. In fact, we have 11 open postings. I'll do a little shameless plug here, but we have 11 open postings in our Parks, Recreation, and Libraries department on our website tonight. And that's not each one of them. Many of those have multiple positions vacant at that posting. So again, I felt it was prudent to remind everyone, Mayor Pro Tem and council members and members of the public, that we have a couple of challenges in instantly reopening. One, the appropriations, and two, finding people. We are at a record low in terms of response to our job vacancies, and very slow responses. So with that, Mr. Tripp, may I invite you to wrap up this section of the COVID-19 report. Sir?
Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready just to transition to the next item, which will be Cody Erb.
Okay. Ms. Erb, I think you have an update for us.
Good evening, sir. Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I do have an update for you. I'd like to ask Michelle Kennedy to join us. She has helped get us ready to this point in the next steps in the strategic plan. So just as a reminder, we had you had your retreat on April 10th and 11th, which provided the initial document we shared with you on April 19th and just briefly went over during study session that evening. That crosswalked the current strategic plan and the proposed updates that Council had provided during the retreat. Following that, staff took some extra steps with Michelle's assistance and developed what was attachment D on your agenda memo tonight. It's a Word document with the proposed City Council guiding principles, 4 goals, and a number of objectives and action items. So I'm going to hand it over to Michelle and ask her to facilitate getting us to a point where you all are comfortable with the plan, the language that's in it, and then we can follow up with any edits and hopefully bring it back to final vote in the next few weeks.
Good evening, Michelle. Michelle, you're muted.
There, trying to get my cursor to the right place on the screen. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. It's good to see you all again. There's a lot of work that has happened between your retreat in April, or early, I guess it's May now, and so what I'd like to do is point out some of the things that are the same and that have changed from your previous plan to the plan that you're going to look at this evening, as well as talk a little bit about the work that the departments have done to bring you action items that relate to each of the objectives that are in the draft plan that's before you. So what we did following your retreat weekend was to crosswalk everything that you created and generated in your retreat with the previous plan, the plan that we worked off of to update. And that is shown in attachment A. So you can see a direct crosswalk between which objectives you wanted to keep, which objectives you wanted to alter a little bit, which objectives kind of could go away because they were either complete or, well, really because they were complete. We had Don and his staff look at that. And we also, so what you also will see is new are those guiding principles that you developed, which were not in your previous plan, but which was a new piece of work that you were all interested in generating and committing to. So if you turn to the current draft of the plan, what has occurred since you did your generative work at your retreat in April was the crosswalk, which I just talked about, and then the additional work to actually create the goal statements and the objectives to have them be very action-oriented. Instead of just having a phrase that describes a goal, we actually had a descriptive goal that is very action-oriented with an end result in mind. And so we worked on your goals and your objectives to put them in that language. The other thing that happened was once we had those goals and objectives kind of laid out and we knew which ones probably wouldn't need to continue into the next plan, we assigned the department directors and their staff to look at each goal and each objective under each goal and identify actions that would help the city make progress towards each objective. And so what you have now in front of you in attachment D is really all of the completed work, the work that you did in your council session, the work that we did to refine the language of the ideas that you generated, and then the detailed department level work that was required to come up with action so you can have a truly actionable plan that gets implemented. So I will stop there and ask if there are any questions before we go through the plan goal by goal.
Michelle, I'm not, well, yeah, I got one. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just really briefly, and I think I'll wait to ask the questions. As we go through each goal, will you be asking us questions on that goal, or would you rather we? Okay.
Yep, I think it would be, yeah, since this is a work session, I think it would be really useful to go through goal by goal, look at all the objectives and all of the actions under each goal. But we'll start with the vision and the guiding principles, and then we'll work through each goal. Other questions before we start reviewing it?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, great. So the vision statement is something that you all chose to really preserve from the previous plan to this plan. So I don't think you will notice any changes there. That was pretty much a complete carryover. This area that I described earlier, the guiding principles, are new. And these were generated by you, and we wanted to kind of collapse them. The ones that were similar, we collapsed them into a single guiding principle. And that was per your direction of, if we have 8 or 10 guiding principles, people won't remember them, and it will be hard to actually use them. They won't be as useful. So we tried to cull them down to a small number that was really descriptive of what your thinking process was. And just for clarity for members of the community and the public that might be listening in, it might be helpful to really hone in on what guiding principles are. Guiding principles are not outcome measures. They're not metrics. They are principles by which you would make decisions, or you would guide your decision making. So they are principles that would cause you to make a decision about what you would want to include in your strategic plan. They are principles that would cause you to decide how you're going to go about carrying out the work of the city. And so when we developed took the goals and objectives that you developed and fine-tuned them, and then asked the department directors to create actions, we mapped every goal, every objective, and every action step back to the guiding principles and made sure all of those aligned with at least one guiding principle. And as we go through here, I think you'll see that there are several that align to more than one guiding principle. So it wasn't just to check the box, it was a true exercise to make sure that the content of this plan aligns with the guiding principles that you all created. So I'll stop there and ask if there are questions or comments that you have about the guiding principles, or you would like to potentially make some edits to what's there.
Michelle, I'm still not seeing any questions at this point.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Hang on a minute then. We lost Michelle in there.
Oh no.
Am I still here?
Well, if you are, we can't see you. There you are. You don't have anything on the screen, which is okay, because we've still got the technical difficulties we were dealing with. They're trying to get those back up on the screen.
Yeah, what I'm seeing on the screen are this taking a quick break. The study session will resume shortly, and then I'm able to see all of you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, you had a question at this point.
I did. I just wanted to say thank you for including the final guiding principle, that cause-driven upstream solutions. And I'm not sure, it just feels a little bit clunky. All of the other guiding principles are a little bit more self-explanatory. And and with that said, I'm not sure I'm quite ready to offer improvements or suggestions. But the idea for me with the upstream upstream solutions is really understanding source as well as symptoms, right? And so I'm not sure if the idea is to understand both when we're coming up with policy direction. So I don't know if that quite captures it. I would defer to my colleagues to see if they feel comfortable with how it's written currently. And with the crickets, I'm assuming I'm the only one who had concerns with the way it's written there. Okay.
And no one else. All right, Michelle, can you move on?
Yes, and if I will say, if we can come up with anything that more crisply captures your comment, Mayor Pro Tem, we definitely will. We'll give that some additional thought.
I guess maybe, yeah, like holistic policy making, like understanding sources and symptoms or something of issues. Just I don't know.
Councilor DeMott.
I'm following what you're saying, and I don't mean to give crickets. I'm just trying to think what would encapsulate it better. And I don't know that there's a more catchy way to encapsulate it. I feel like it does encapsulate what we're after, but it is kind of clunky. But I don't know what a better way to say it is. But I wanted to at least validate what you're saying, because I thought I put some thought into it. I didn't come up with anything better, I guess.
We will take one more look at it, and if we can come up with an alternative, we can run that by you before you actually adopt the strategic plan.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Great. So let's move then to goal 1, which is before we move into the goals, I also meant to mention, and I neglected to, that another change was that you ended up reducing the number of goals, strategic goals in your plan. So you went from 6 to 4. So that was another change that you made. So the first goal is foster and maintain a beautiful, desirable, safe, and environmentally responsible city. And the first objective under that goal is continue to expand police and fire outreach to connect better with the community. And then there are a couple of action items there. So rather than read the action items out loud, I'm just going to stop there and ask for comments, questions, or suggested edits for either the goal statement or the first objective under the goal statement.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted to poll my colleagues real quick and see, do we want to be specific only to police and fire, or do we think this is in general something that we should be doing, or do we think that's already encapsulated? Like, are those the only two we want to call out? Or is the answer yes, because we already have this kind of folded in elsewhere in transparency, I guess.
Councilor Scully.
I agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that it should be expanded to other areas of the state. It should be more general. It shouldn't be specifically, I hate to use the word, but targeting police and fire, because I think that outreach and connectivity is actually something we need every department in our city to be doing.
Other comments? Councilor DeMott.
I don't have a problem with it being expanded, and I don't think you're wrong. I just think that I also want to make sure these are specifically highlighted. I think part of the intent with specifically around police, and I think that our departments have done historically a great job, but they've done some new efforts to try to continue their work that they've done in outreach. And I just want to make sure that we're not losing sight of those things by, trying to expand it and make it holistic with all the departments. So I just want to make sure that we're highlighting those, because I specifically think the programs we're working on are around police and fire, and they're really important, I think, to the community.
One option. Go ahead.
Hang on a second, Michelle. Let's get all the comments.
Yep, that's good.
More.
Yes, Mayor. I think too, when we came about this, the direction we were looking at was keying into the results of the citizen survey, where that's kind of a top line concern of our residents. I have no problem, expanding it, because it is something, as far as outreach for all of our departments. But I agree with Councilor DeMott too, that the police and fire and the results of this biannual citizen survey really key on those too. So I could go with expanding objective 1A, and then if we have other bullet points below those two, because I think the first bullet point, it will be critical as far as the transparency part too.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. I do have a note to ask. It looks like on the staff comments, there was a indication as far as metrics that said maybe highlight from PD's monthly report. I think this goes back to the ask. I think it was originally Councilor DeMott's as far as reporting crime stats. As far as the metrics. And so I'd like to really see that in as a metric to this bullet point in particular, is involving those or publishing those crime stats on a monthly basis.
All right, other comments for Michelle? All right, Michelle, now to you.
Yes, so I was just going to acknowledge Councilmember Seymour's comment. He actually made it before I was going to, which is you could, one way to manage this is to make the objective itself broader, objective 1A, and then address police and fire outreach specifically in one of your action items below that. And we can ask staff to come back with an action item that is specific to police and fire. And I have noted also the comment about the crime statistics metrics that Councilmember Smith brought up. And we are going to be creating performance metrics that support this plan. And so that is duly noted that we're going to want to incorporate those. Are we ready to move to the next objective under goal 1?
I think we are.
Okay. Objective 1B is preserve, expand, and enhance trails and open spaces and provide connectivity to neighborhoods. And then there are 4 action items listed there, which I'll ask you to look at. Any comments, questions, suggestions for objective 1B or any of the actions below that?
Mayor Pro Tem.
I noticed that it was included in 1C, but I was a little confused that it wasn't included in 1B. I felt we had talked about with an eye towards geographic equity, or saying throughout the city, just something to kind of nod to wanting to make sure all residents have access to these amenities.
So if I understand the comment, Mayor Pro Tem, you would like 1B to also reflect or encompass the geographic equity component. Did I hear that right? Okay.
Correct. And I mean, we could say throughout the city or something, just.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councilor Scully.
I withdraw my comment. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I didn't see the following. Any other comments on this piece? All right, Michelle.
Okay, we'll go to objective 1C, which is offer parks and recreation opportunities with emphasis on geographic equity. And there are 6 action items underneath that. I think if your pagination might show the 6th one on the next page.
All right, Councilor Bowles.
Yeah, thank you. So when we just say offer, I get that it's about the geographic equity, and that's the emphasis on that goal, but do we want to say something more? Because we already offer parks and recreation opportunities, of course. Do we want to say something like offer innovative parks and rec opportunities or award-winning? Or it seems to me like we're just, it doesn't have as much punch as I would like, I guess. And does that make sense to anyone else? Or because we do, the nature play is somewhat innovative and it may be award-winning. I just think we need to punch that up to make it sound like we're taking a larger leap forward than it sounds right now.
Councilor Smith.
Thanks, Councilor Bowles, for your thoughts on that. I guess I get into the question then as far as the guiding principles, because it is the guiding principle to then drop down into all of these objectives as far as what I understood. So I don't know if there necessarily needs to be a call out as far as innovation, since that's entirely a guiding principle as far as what we're trying to do. But that's just my thought.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Bowles. I think adding the word innovation would make a lot of sense. I don't know that I'd want to say award winning, because I think that that puts a lot of pressure on our group. But I do like the idea of innovation.
Any other comments? All right, Michelle.
One more comment from me, just a suggestion. Another word that you could incorporate in here that would suggest that you're upping the bar, for example, would be to say, instead of using offer, you could use the word advance, which suggests movement and, improvement. So we could change.
I like that. I think that I would like that. I just think offer just doesn't see. I mean, this ought to be more aspirational and kind of up the bar a little bit. I think that helps me with that. So I like that word choice. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I've changed offer to advance, and I've added innovative. So it would read advance innovative parks and recreation opportunities with an emphasis on geographic equity. Does that sound more like? I'm seeing a couple of thumbs up, heads nodding. Okay, good. All right. Any thoughts or clarification on the action steps under that one?
Mayor, I do. Can I have one more question? I don't understand. There's one of them I don't really know if I totally understand it. Continued use of post-tax revenues and then using that throughout the city. I'm not sure I fully understand what that point does or says. I mean, what we mean by that.
I would need to defer to someone from the city and particularly Parks and Rec to answer that question.
Yeah, I would call Jason Gink to the discussion here, please, or Barbara Opie, Deputy or Director.
Hi, Jason Gang, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, but I'm just assuming everyone can hear me okay. So Councilor Bowles, I believe, asked a question. you mind repeating the question one more time, please?
So it's the point where we're suggesting we continue to use post-tax revenues to provide consistent funding source that can be used across counties to meet needs of the Parks and Rec system throughout the city. I'm not quite. Can you just clarify, like, what does that mean? I probably support it. I just don't understand what we're getting at with that point.
Sure. We're talking about land acquisitions and funding to expand the open space system and parks, and the post as our most significant source of revenues to provide that, as well as partnering with our granting agencies to advance that. I certainly appreciate Council's adoption of over 1.4 million plus this year that, as you know, we're in the process of leveraging to achieve more property within our holdings. And so we want to continue at that pace, hopefully with council support, to continue to expand and take care of our open space and park system.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Gank. I thought I would support it. I just wasn't sure exactly what it meant. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I really appreciate Councilor Bowles highlighting this. It seems interesting to have this embedded into the strategic plan document as an action item, because I don't think we typically detail revenue sources. Can you talk, is this to kind of remind our residents that this post fund is essential for the quality of parks that we have, as it is something that eventually sunsets? I'm just trying to understand why this revenue source in particular is highlighted in this way with these specific purposes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jason Gang, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries again. Appreciate the question and the follow-up. And yes, I think that it's the opportunity, the post revenues and the importance of the post revenues and how we utilize those funds for those acquisitions and expansion and protections for open space are becoming more and more important, I think, across Colorado. Recently some of our neighboring agencies had some measures that have gone out and things along those lines. And so we thought it was staff that was recommending that it was important enough to call that out.
All right, thanks, Jason. Michelle, I think you're up again.
Okay. Objective 1D, work to bring resilience and triple bottom line practices to code, programs, capital infrastructure, and governmental functions, with 3 action items underneath that objective.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you all. I guess I was really surprised to see there was 3 very pretty specific objectives. I felt like council kind of took time to craft this to be more broad than the previous conversations that identified sustainability, and to be more specific, saying, we want this embedded in our CIP, government functions, and really looking at the full triple bottom line. So I guess I was surprised that only 3 elements came through. And we really, I guess I was a little surprised by that, and feel like maybe not this year because of everything going on with the pandemic and the recovery, but eventually I'd like to see that fleshed out a little bit for it to be as meaningful as we had hoped.
Other comments? All right, Michelle.
So we'll move to goal 2, and we can certainly provide staff with that feedback, Mayor Pro Tem. So we'll move to goal 2, cultivate a thriving, inclusive, and engaged community through access to opportunity and a resilient and diverse economy. I'll stop there and just check to make sure that you don't have questions or changes to the goal statement before we go to the objectives.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you. The only suggestion I have in this, sorry, I'm flipping back and forth between the 3 attachments, is the, let's see, 2, implementing a small business stand-up program, I would emphasize in partnership. I know it says partnership, but I would want to make sure that this is in partnership with the chamber and not in competition with the chamber, because I think we would be conflicting in our resources at that point if we're trying to stand up programs similar to what the chamber is. So if there's an emphasis that we could put on partnership, that would be appreciated.
Yes, so Councilmember Smith, just to clarify, so I see that you're speaking to that first action item under Objective 2A around the business stand-up program in partnership with the chamber. Are you suggesting, just so I can clarify, you would like the word partnership to appear in the goal statement? Am I hearing you right?
No, I think just, and maybe I'm one stepping too far ahead here on Objective 2A. I think the statement, the goal statement is good. I just would like maybe the action item under the objective to maintain a partnership, not necessarily beginning a whole new program. I think the intent of our conversation of that was to make sure that the city is checking in with our small businesses as a toolkit, as what is mentioned here, so that if we came about providing any grants in the future, that we know that all of our businesses are in good standing and don't find in the long run that there are some lagged behind. So that was, I think, the emphasis in that discussion.
So I think now that I understand where you're going with that maybe opening up that action statement with something like maintain the city's partnership with the Chamber of Commerce to do these things. Is that what you're looking for? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Councilor Seymour. You're good? Okay.
Michelle hit it on the head. I was wordsmithing that direction also, so thank you.
Great.
All right, Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, so anything else under Objective 2, which is work with local and regional partners to create a workforce development strategy for Westminster? Okay, seeing none, I will move to Objective 2B. Develop and lead placemaking strategies that expand cultural connections, opportunities, and improve access to the arts. And there are 3 action items there.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like how this is written. I think focusing on the arts is important. Under the action item, the last bullet point, establish a creative district. I believe that is already the case with our arts district in historic Westminster. So I'd like to maybe expand on that of what we already have established. I'm not sure the direction as far as what the creative district is with our staff, but it does reference historic Westminster and Westminster Station. But I'd like us to enhance on what we've already established as a city for an arts district.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Having a hard time with that mute button today. Just wanted to make sure I understand what Councilor Smith is asking, and I think I agree with it, which would be on that final bullet point, not just say establish, but like establish and expand to acknowledge the folks that are already there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, because we already have an arts district in that.
No,
yeah. So I think, because this to me means we're starting up a whole new creative district. And so I would like to see staff just build on to what we already established and maybe promote it or kind of remold it if need be. But I would like it to build off of what we've already created and not establish something completely different.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying, and I agree. So I am very supportive of 2B, and I'm happy that this made it in the strategic plan. I think we need to support the cultural opportunities in our community to have a great community. So thank you.
All right, Michelle.
Okay, objective 2C, continue to implement the strategies for Westminster's key economic areas. And there are 4 action items underneath that. Are we good to move to the next objective?
Not seeing any comments yet. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, let's look at objective 2D. Identify neighborhoods in Westminster and help them begin to work together as neighbors to grow the sense of place and community in their neighborhoods. And there are 5 action items under that objective.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilor Seymour, please help correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we had a whole conversation about the fact that we didn't like the use of the term identify neighborhoods, but more like partner with neighborhoods or support neighborhoods. Because I thought you had a whole thing about how neighborhoods already know who they are. Am I accurate in this?
No, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think you're correct in that. We have most of our neighborhoods have a great identity, and we might be able to enhance that identity and assist them in promoting that too, which will bring greater neighborhood of self-awareness. So I think they already know who they are. We just need to find a way to continue to help them. Some of our neighborhoods are rather large, especially some of those specifically that do not have HOA. So that's why I believe that we had that discussion and addressing that to help them come together. And part of that too is some of the issues we talked about neighbors, dispute resolution, solving those problems locally. So thank you for highlighting that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, the other word in there that I think could be seen as a little bit dismissive of the work that other people have already done to build community in their neighborhoods is that begin to work together, right? I don't think it's necessary to say help them work together, but I think it might rub folks the wrong way to presume they're not.
So would you like to replace identify with the word support? Is that the word that conveys what you want there? And then we would remove the word begin.
Something like that, yeah. I trust you guys to do a better job wordsmithing. I had a little bit of concern over those words.
Thank you for that. Any questions or clarification on the action items? Shall I move to objective 2E?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you, Mayor. 2E is to promote and provide opportunities for community education and civic engagement. And there are 5 action items under that one.
All right. Councilor DeMott.
Thank you, Mayor. So on this one, what I was curious about, and I know that we've talked a lot about the Citizens Academy as far as like a governmental one. Does that also, were we planning on also covering the judicial branch of the city as far as like how our courts run? I figured it was, but I wanted to make sure that was part of Councilor Volz's recommendation, because I think that would be useful for people to understand how our courts are run and in what parts that we do. Specifically, I mean, around things like domestic violence. I know we've talked a lot about how not every city does that. So it would be good for people to understand exactly what our courts handle.
Could I ask the city manager to field that question from Councilmember DeMott?
I can do that, Michelle, or sorry, Dawn.
Go ahead, Cody.
Councilor DeMott, that one evening during this 8-week Civic Academy does have the courts as the focus.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the recommendation, though. You are correct. They do quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Credit goes to Councilor Bowles, I think, but I just wanted to make sure that was in there.
Thank you, Councilor Bowles, as well.
Go ahead, Michelle.
All right, we'll move to goal number 3. Goal 3 is to provide visionary, effective, and collaborative government. And the first objective is develop within the city manager's office an annual program of specific department business process improvement reviews. And there are 3 action steps under that one. Any comments, questions?
Not so far. Councilor Smith.
Sorry. I just wanted to confirm or clarify that the hire and onboard and innovation coordinator, that's already an FTE position. Is that correct? And that's more for staff. Sorry, Michelle.
Yes, Councilor Smith, it is.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Michelle, go ahead.
All right, objective 3B, expand governmental and non-governmental collaborative partnerships and tap into existing collective resources wherever possible to meet community needs and goals.
All right, Michelle, seeing no movement.
Great. Objective 3C, address homelessness, mental health needs, and environmental concerns at their source through partnership efforts.
Councilor DeMott.
I don't know if this is captured in another goal, but I just want to point it out because I was doing some thinking on this and wanted to just re-emphasize the point that it's very important that we get the mental health resources for our employee base, specifically around police and fire and the jobs they do. So I just want to make sure that it's encapsulated as a goal somewhere in the document.
Okay. Yeah, that relates to the city's own workforce, particularly in police and fire. I don't know that we have that in here. We'll have to figure out where to tuck it in. I don't think that's specifically called out as an action, Councilmember DeMott.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I saw it in this was the point that kind of I had it on my notes that I wanted to bring it up because that was mental health being spelled out. So I just want to make sure we figure out where that we could fit that if I get support from my colleagues.
Yeah. If we don't resolve it before the end of tonight's work session, we will figure it out and we'll bring it back to you and make sure you know that it's there.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I do recall Councilor DeMont bringing this up during the retreat. I do believe we had support for that, and I'm wondering if objective 3E would be the place.
It's broad enough. 3E is broad enough that it could fit there. Yes.
Councilor Bowles.
I'm going to go back to 3B. If we go to 3B and go to the third action item, and maybe somebody already said this, but do we mean core data request or Cora data requests? Or is it just core data? Because at one point we were talking about having information for Cora requests. And I don't know if that's in here. And maybe, we have core requests and we're going to identify what are most of those and we respond to them quickly and have them available. I guess I have a question. Is that, are we just talking about data there or also Cora, public information record requests? Does anyone else, does that make sense, my question?
It does.
Okay.
And If we want it to be both, I think the language needs to call that out. The language needs to speak to both if that's what we want.
So remember we had that discussion about we get regular core requests and there's just probably identifying a handful of them.
Yep.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else, but I thought we did. And then we were going to have that just very available so people could just look it up quickly and it would save staff time and resources. And I don't know if we put that in here somewhere else, but when I'm reading, I didn't know if that meant core requests or core, C-O-R-E, data requests. But somewhere I think we need to capture that core conversation, I guess. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, all right. Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just piggyback on what Councilor Bowles said. Yes, Councilor Bowles, you do remember correctly. We did talk about Cora and not core. And the reason why we had talked about starting with the most, because we were trying to figure out what data to use and what data to post, and it was just overwhelming. So I think we thought we would start with the Cora requests for data and put that out there first, and that would solve a lot of communication problems and it would streamline work for the staff.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councilor Scully. I thought I somewhere remembered that. Thank you.
That might have been an error in translation on our part when we transferred what went up on the colored sticky notes into our document that we prepared. So I apologize if we made an error in translation there.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle, it's Jason Gank, Parks and Recreation Libraries Director, and I apologize, Council, for interrupting. I just want to call out a correction that's on your document. The second bullet under 3B talks about partnering with school districts / Parks and Recreation Libraries to find synergy and compatible. Goals was dropped from the document for some reason.
Oh.
So actually what we're looking for is finding natural synergy and compatible goals. I do apologize for that dropping off the document. We'll correct that after the draft. Sorry about that.
Jason, thank you for pointing that out. I completely missed it. I didn't even notice that it wasn't there. So that was a great correction. Thank you. All right, I think we were on 3C where we made, Councilmember DeMott brought out the point that was important to council and was discussed during your retreat, that we wanted to make sure that the city is adequately addressing the mental health needs of police and fire and making sure there are resources for that. So Mayor Pro Tem Sites suggested that we fold that into Objective 3E, which is to promote the organizational culture of service, pride, integrity, responsibility, innovation, and teamwork. So I think if we're done with 3C, we would move on to 3D.
Michelle, you got Mayor Pro Tem.
This goes back to my point earlier, and I've been a big proponent of wanting to make sure we understand upstream solutions, but we do still have a responsibility as a city to deal with symptoms. And so we hear a lot, about, so I don't want this to be so specific about the source that we also aren't treating the immediate symptoms that can impact not just the people maybe experiencing homelessness, or mental health or environmental concerns, but like it's the very present symptom of that concern. I think we have to recognize, and so maybe it doesn't need to change, but I guess I wanted to make sure I was clear to staff that I wasn't saying we no longer address how it's manifested, but we also don't ignore the source. So that was going back to the guiding principles. That's why I wanted it to be both source and symptom, kind of understanding the full problem. So.
Councilor DeMott.
Not to belabor it, but to that point, specifically something like Ralston House, they're trying to get to the root because they oftentimes, statistically speaking, many people who are in jail, not maybe Mayor Pro Tem Sites knows the actual statistic, had been abused as kids. So like those are the kind of things that we have to deal with on both ends. So like our partnership with Ralston House, but then, for people who slip through the cracks, being able to deal with them. And on that same note, like working with regional partners, it was another example as far as like when people age out of foster care. I know that's a regional problem and obviously not one the city's going to handle, but we certainly want to make sure that we have a spectrum of partners that handle, from beginning to end of those kind of issues.
Other comments? All right, Michelle.
Just a quick clarifying question, Mayor. So would you like to remove the at their source language from the objective, or do you want to keep it?
I would like to have, similar to what Councilor Demont just said, from source to symptom, like understanding that we're wanting to address it throughout the spectrum of the policy concern.
Yeah. All right. We will make that change. Okay, on to objective 3D. Develop an economic development strategy that contributes to city vision attainment and is executed through collaborative work between the City of Westminster, the business community, residents, and other partners of Westminster. There's one action item under that objective. And it's one item, but it's a broad one. It's a very broad action item.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. It is a really broad one. I'm wondering, and perhaps it's not necessary. It just feels a little confusing. I mean, we're talking about our strategic plan document, and I know that we're talking in 3D bullet point 1. You're talking about an economic development strategic plan document. Yep. So basically the bullet points just saying to do what it's like they're saying to do what the objective is, I guess, exactly. Is it even necessary? Right?
Well, the action item of completing a plan, that's a significant piece of work. So we felt like it should
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. That's fine.
And if it helps to lessen the confusion, one thing that we could potentially change about that bullet point is we could say prepare a strategy document as opposed to a strategic plan document, if that adds some clarification and clears up any confusion.
We're probably reading this more closely and parsing words than anyone will. As long as it doesn't cause any confusion for staff to implement it or for our residents to know where we're going, I think we're fine. So.
Just move ahead, Phil.
All right. Objective 3E is to promote the organizational culture of service, pride, integrity, responsibility, innovation, and teamwork. I have a question of clarification. So we're adding an action item about mental health resources for city employees. Do we want that to specifically say police and fire, recognizing that those two professions do have significant challenges, or do we broaden it beyond that, or do we keep it specific to police and fire? Just for clarification.
I would be reluctant to say that we're not going to offer this, or the perception that we're not offering it to other employees. Councilor Demont.
I agree with the mayor, but I also would want it called out in a way that we're getting adequate and specific ones, because I mean, they're different jobs. So I think that, like, particularly in the realm of mental health, one of the things I've heard specifically that's very helpful is like, say, in veterans and police officers, when they deal with people who specifically deal with veterans and police officers who have walked in their shoes, is always something I hear very good in therapeutic settings. So making sure that we have resources that fit the reason why we're having them, I guess is the way that I would want to approach it, because police and fire definitely have some specific job related traumas that other jobs don't have. So although I do agree that we would want resources available across the spectrum for our employee base.
Councilor Scully.
I just wanted to say that I agree with the mayor.
You know, going back to your comments, Councilor DeMott, even though they're in the police department, people forget about dispatch. And when they see the word police, they don't think about those, and they have as much, if not more.
Very, very much a good point, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Michelle.
Quick point of clarification. Would it be appropriate to write that action item as providing those resources to the city's workforce, and then maybe with an add-on statement with particular emphasis on high-stress positions or police and fire or something like that?
How about calling them public safety?
Public safety.
That incorporates all of those.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. Okay, with that clarification, I think we can move on. Goal number 4, advance the city's long-term fiscal financial sustainability to provide ongoing excellence in city services and a well-planned community that meets the needs of residents now and in the future. And the first objective, 4A, is identify and implement innovative approaches to diversify the city's revenues.
Mayor Pro Tem.
This is another one I remember having a conversation with Councilor Seymour on. And I thought, and Councilor DeMont actually, and I believe Councilor Voles, we had a conversation about removing the fiscal and financial from it, because we felt like if we're really looking more at triple bottom line sustainability, it's already baked in there, but it also makes sure that we're offering, everything about what we do is sustainable for our residents, right? Continuing to provide that high quality of life in the qualitative ways as well. So I thought we had maybe talked about getting it, and so I was a little surprised to see that baked back in there.
It makes sense to remove it because the specific different areas that you're talking about for triple bottom line are captured in the objectives. So it does not need to be specifically called out in the goal statement.
Agreed. And I looked through the objectives, and I think they're actually more captured without the fiscal. I think they're more rounded out or encapsulated that way.
So we will remove the fiscal financial words from the goal statement to have it be more broad as you intended.
All right, go ahead.
Anything on objective 4A? Objective 4B, build and maintain infrastructure, prioritizing resilience and resource efficiency. Comment, points of clarification on that one.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, then objective 4C, enhance access to opportunity through improved connections and multimodal mobility solutions and alternatives. And there are 2 action items there.
Go ahead, Michelle.
And then the last objective under goal 4 is to develop a mix of housing and retail to meet the diverse needs of the entire community. And there are 2 actions there.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't mean to jump back, but I'm going to, just looking at objective 4B, like, can we have some kind of some more emphasis in maintaining and taking care of what we already have? And maybe that's already in the capital improvement plan as that first budget item. But I'd like to see a little bit more of an emphasis in the O&M of what's already existing that we have.
Okay, moving on. Next.
And so back to 4C, was there anything on the one about improved connections and multimodal mobility solutions? Or 4D, mix of housing and retail? That is the end of the plan.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I didn't know how my colleagues felt about maybe acknowledging a commitment to completion and expansion of rail, particularly the fast tracks corridor in Westminster. If we felt that under 4C, we should call that out. I don't know. It feels like it fits in there, and our residents, I don't know about you, but everyone always asks about it. So just wanted to see your thoughts.
Councilor Scully.
I would absolutely agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that's a good idea.
Councilor Demott.
I just was going to agree with the Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, Councilor Bowles.
Done what Councilor Seymour did. Thumbs up. I agree also, and I'm glad we called that out. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I received what I needed from all of you. Appreciate the discussion. We'll make the changes and bring it back to you for final review and your adoption.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
All right, Council, going back to our agenda, due to the difficulties we were having earlier, we skipped the part about any council reports that need to be made. So I'll go back to the council members now. Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing that I wanted to share, and I know some of you were there, was on Saturday, many of us joined with the Countryside community in recognizing Tom Romensberger. They renamed the ballparks that he was a huge part of making that happen and funding it. I was talking to his daughter-in-law, and she was explaining, because she works in the Parks and Rec industry, and the fact that he was able to help get a GOCO grant is not a small feat. That's very hard for even cities to be able to do. I know that our staff has done many because they're professionals, but I just wanted to recognize him again, and as well as recognize the staff for doing a fantastic job with organizing and putting on that event. It was great to see everybody out for the opening day of Little League there, and being able to recognize Tom and his life and his just the things that he's done for our community. So thank you.
Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Demott took the words right out of my mouth. It was a very well done program on Saturday. And of course, Parks and Rec made it so that it was 80 degrees and sunny outside, so we didn't have to stand in the mud of the infield. So we'll give them credit for that too. And along that lines, I'm sure many people will also recognize this as, and I hope I'm not taking someone's thunder, but it was public announcement that Director of Park Direction Libraries, Jason Gank, has announced that he is moving on to greater things. I want to thank him personally for the service he's given the city and to the greater community, not just as his job as director, but as an integrated part of the city. He couldn't be converted over to being a CU football fan, but there are some things that just cannot be done. So I want to thank him and wish him well as he enhances his career. So thank you.
Councilor Scully.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And piggyback on Councilor DeMott and Councilor Seymour's recognitions, both of our resident who shines in our recognition of the park this week, and also of Director Gang. A huge loss for the city, in my opinion. Today, Councilor Seymour and myself attended the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council. It was a good meeting. They talked about climate change resilience, specifically in relation to flooding, drought, erosion, windstorms, vegetation mortality, and wildfires. A lot of interesting reports from the group that manages the Rocky Flats refuge. One of the things, there was a really good suggestion, and I'm looking to pursue it, is one of the residents suggested that we put signs out on the trail that would explain what the land was, and perhaps give guidance to health opportunities to stay healthy while out on that trail. And I think that was a good idea. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And they also went over why Rocky Flats, they went over the groundwater, the surface water, and they also talked a lot about comparing it to the Dust Bowl situation of the 30s, and how that would not be something that would happen to Rocky Flats, because the Dust Bowl was specifically caused by farming and the way people did their farms at that time. We may see a decline in our vegetation, but there will be new vegetation that will take hold out there that is more natural to our area. So it was a good conversation, and just wanted to report on it. Thank you.
Other council members? Mr. Franco, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. The executive session that's on your agenda as the next item for tonight's meeting is for consultation with the city attorney regarding a pending liability claim for the purpose of receiving legal advice and obtaining council direction thereon, pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code sections 111.3, C3 and 7, and Colorado Revised Statute section 24.6, 402, 4B, and E1.
All right, as defined by the city attorney, we've had a request to go into an executive session following the close of our public session. And I will advise council to answer verbally, as I will confirm with each member of council that they are prepared to go into executive session at that time. Councilor DeMott?
Yes.
Councilor Scully?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Smith?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilor Seymour?
Yes.
Councilor Vold?
Yes.
All right, we will shortly go into executive session, but before we do, we'll bring you up to speed on one other item. This afternoon, I met with the city clerk and tendered my resignation effective at the end of business tonight. Based upon the recommendation of my physician, I am resigning from the position of mayor. I want to thank the residents of the city for the past 4+ decades of time I've had with them. But most certainly, I want to recognize one particular group, and that's our city employees. We have had excellent service out of our employees. They are dedicated. They come to work every day through, no matter what happens, they're here. And I couldn't be prouder of the bunch. And I have enjoyed serving with them. Some of them I've actually worked for here at the city. But I've appreciated my time here with the city. And once we finish with the next item on our agenda, I will be done as the mayor. I appreciate the public. Thank you very much for tuning. Council, you have a link to go to for executive session. We will give you to 8:45 to give you about 6 minutes for a short bio break. Thank you. Council, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.